Sure.
I never actually officially met him until the first day of rehearsal. We had some rehearsing, about 2 weeks of rehearsal, and then the last few days, Bob Rock came in and listened to all the tunes that we had, and then I think he and Dave decided on which tunes they wanted to do. And then we were off to Vancouver.
Wow.
Now, had you worked with Brett Tuggle beforehand?
Oh, my God, many, many times.
Okay. I thought so. I didn't think it was your first meeting with him. So what kind of history do you and Brett had together?
Well, I met Brett in 1971, I think. 1971, I was playing with Mitch Ryder, and we had another guitar player, and that didn't work out. He ended up leaving the band, and we needed another guitar player, and we were playing in Denver, and Brett Tuggle was in a band that opened for us, and we liked his playing. We thought he was a really good guitar player. He played keyboards too, but he was mainly playing guitar in his band. So we approached him and asked him if he'd want to join the band, so he ended up joining Mitch Ryder's band, and it was on half the Mitch Ryder album, and we toured together. And Brett and I have done things off and on all through that time.
Was that the Detroit album?
Yeah, that's it.
That's a great album.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of my favorite albums. I really love that record.
All 4 of the songs you wrote made it to the album. How many songs did you guys record?
I was part of 3 people. I was me, Brett, and David Lee Roth, of course.
Right.
So we were all co-writers.
Right, exactly.
On the song. If I remember right, it's been 30 years.
Yeah.
But if I remember right, I think all 4 songs got on the album.
No, right. No, that's what I meant. But I mean, like, all 4 of yours got on the album. Did you over-record for the album? Did you do extra?
No, I don't think we did. If memory serves me, we recorded all the songs that Dave wanted to do, and that was pretty much it. I don't think we did any extra recording, not that I can remember.
Okay, and now in terms of what was the song process, did you and Brett write together and then give Dave the music to write the lyrics?
Yeah, it's a really wonderful way to write, actually. Brett and I would write a track, right? So we would write a track, and Brett's a fairly decent singer. I mean, he sings background with Fleetwood Mac and all kinds of stuff. Right. So he's a pretty good singer. So he and I would work out this track, and then he would try to find melodies and stuff, but he wouldn't try to influence Dave. He would kind of let Dave write the melodies. We just wanted to be sure it was comfortable to sing,
Right.
So we would do a track, and we would record the track and get it all kind of sounding, halfway finished, and then give it to Dave, and then Dave would come up with his own melody and his own lyrics.
Right, of course. What was Dave like to work with? What was his personality like?
Well, he was great, man. Listen, in the studio, he was all work, but not in a really sort of sterile way. He still had his sense of humor, and, it felt like a band. I mean, the really great thing about, I think, what really helped having the 2 weeks of rehearsal was by the time we got in the studio to record the stuff, it actually felt like we were in a band, and Dave's the singer.
Where were you rehearsing?
We rehearsed down in Dave's basement. Dave has a big enough basement in his house in Pasadena there so that we could rehearse down there.
And where were you guys all living?
I lived in Hollywood at the time.
Okay.
And Greg Bissonette and Matt Bissonette also lived in Los Angeles. So we were all in L.A. The only guy that was kind of an import was Jason Becker. He came down from San Francisco, but he lived with, I think it was his grandfather. Okay. He had a grandfather in Glendale.
Sure.
So we were all in the area.
What was Dave's overall concept and approach for A Little Ain't Enough? What did he give you sort of a game plan?
No, not really. In a way, I kind of liked the way we did it. We just focused on each song. In rehearsal, it was kind of cool because Dave, I don't think, made any sort of a judgment about the song to us. You know what I mean? So we just treated each song pretty much equally. We all had a good handle and a good feel for each song. And then when we got up to Vancouver, it was just a matter of recording them, getting the vibe and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
I liked the way we did that, actually. I thought that was really cool. So there was no prejudgment on, well, this song sucks, we don't want to. None of that. We just recorded. And by the time we got to Vancouver, I think Bob Rock and Dave had discussed it, and they knew which songs they wanted to do. We didn't know. We just went in the studio and said, okay, we're going to do this one. Great. Okay, we're ready, Okay. I kind of liked that. It kind of kept it spontaneous,
Nice.
Now, this was the first album David Lee Roth had recorded with 2 guitarists. How did you and Jason approach that in terms of who's playing what?
Well, actually, that's way easier than you might think. Jason, you got to understand, is from an entirely different world, on a different approach to guitar than me. I'm definitely old school. I'm more blues based. I'm more Keith Richards and stuff like that. And Jason, of course, is much more of the modern guitar player. I guess you could say like Steve Vai or Joe Satriani or somebody like that. Although Jason brought his own brand of shredding, for lack of a better word, than anybody else I'd heard. When I heard him play, I wasn't a real fan of shredding, but the way he put it together was really special and unique to him. So because he was kind of the shredder dude, and I was more the old school guy, we never stepped on each other's toes ever. It just worked out.
That's
yeah,
right.
oh yeah, it was easy to do. Easy to do.
Yeah.
Were you guys allowed to work it out amongst yourselves, or was there any direction from Dave on what you guys were supposed to be doing?
That's another thing I liked about Dave. He left it to us. Now, if we did something he didn't like, he would say so, but that rarely happened. I think I remember one time that he thought we could change a part here and there or something, but it was just a suggestion. Most of the time, he just left it to us, and then I think kind of left it to Bob Rock because, Bob Rock is as a heavy metal producer as well as a great rock and roll producer, and he knows his guitar stuff. It's great to just kind of leave it to the people that know their stuff, and Dave knew what he liked. That's always a great thing.
Yeah.
You need somebody like that. He needs to know. The guy needs to know what he likes, and then you're off. Then you just do whatever you want, and if it's not what he likes, then you'll know.
Were you a Van Halen fan?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's a little hard not to be. They did some great stuff. I was an Eddie Van Halen fan for sure. I sort of tried to do that sort of thing, but it just wasn't in my psyche to do that.
Right.
I tried it. I tried doing the tapping and all that stuff, but blues was so ingrained in me. It's so much a part of me and my soul and my emotions and everything and blood and all that stuff that I just couldn't get my fingers to do that. My fingers didn't want to do that. My fingers wanted to do melodic stuff with vibrato and bending. You know what I mean? So I never adapted well to it. But boy, I sure loved listening to guys who could do it really well. And of course, Mr. Edward was the king. He was the guy. He was the daddy, He was the godfather.
Obviously, Eddie recently passed. Did
Yeah.
you ever meet Eddie?
No, unfortunately, I never got to meet him. I think I saw him a couple of times in passing, but we never got to just shake hands and say, "Hi, man, how you doing? Nice to meet you." We never got to do that, and I'm really sorry about that because I think I would have loved to have sat and talked to him for a while,
Yeah. In addition to his wizardry on the guitar, he also seemed to have a nice, real rhythm feel, too. He had a lot of different elements to his playing.
He had a wonderful rhythm feel. Now, that to me was very important because back in the classic rock days, guitar players in those days had to be able to play solos and rhythm guitar equally well because sometimes there wasn't another guitar player. So you had to be able to play great rhythm. So most of the guitar players that I knew at the time were really good at rhythm guitar playing as well as soloing. And it was nice to hear Edward took the same feel. Because he was the only guitar player, his rhythm guitar playing had to hold up the song, and it always did. I mean, he was brilliant.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For the Little Ain't Enough album, who would do the rhythm guitar tracks on that? Would that be you, or would it be you?
I did most of them. Now, Jason did the ones like Drop in the Bucket and Showtime, things like that are really, really fast and really complex rhythm stuff. But I did the other things like Tell the Truth and 40 Below, a couple of those other things. I played on almost all of them. I think the Drop in the Bucket and Showtime, I don't think I didn't play on those because Jason wrote those and he had the rhythm guitar parts down. I think he had the proper feel, and I don't know whether I ever would have, to be honest. But so I was left out of those kind of on purpose. I mean, I figured I wouldn't be in there because Jason was the guy who could play that stuff,
Yeah.
But I was more the old rock, the classic rock or the blues or anything like that. That sort of stuff. That's what I like to do.
Many people felt the album was a return to form for Roth, but it was a bit too late. What was your opinion of the album overall as it came out?
Well, that's a dangerous question, isn't it? What am I supposed to say?
No, well,
it's 30 years later. I think it's okay if you give an honest assessment.
I tell you the truth. I was really proud of that record. What I really loved the most about it was that I didn't realize what a good blues singer David Lee Roth was.
Very much so.
There was one time he had a Winnebago up in Vancouver to get us back and forth to the studio and the hotel. And I was sitting in the Winnebago, and there was a box sitting on the console that had a whole bunch of cassettes in it. Mm-hmm. And I was looking through the cassettes, and my God, it's all these old blues, Howlin' Wolf.
Yep.
It's Albert King, it's Elmore James. I couldn't believe there were all these blues guys in there.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, that's what it is. That's why I hear the blues in his voice. He's a great blues singer.
Absolutely. I think he's got the perfect voice for blues. He's got that kind of whiskey-soaked, rough, but he could also, really belt it out. That's for sure. And it's interesting because I think he really discovered his blues voice on that album. And Dave and I happen to be big fans of the album. We feel like it's a very underrated album in the sense that there was some really good stuff on there. But do you also think that, like they say in life, timing is everything, right? So the music culture was changing. By 91, they started getting into the whole grunge era. Do you think it didn't get as much attention because of that?
You know something? I got to be honest with you. I've never, ever been able to figure that out. I was on an album called Berlin by Lou Reed.
Yeah, amazing album.
I thought that was the most incredible album ever.
Sure.
And it just flopped terribly when it first came out. It was horrible.
Right.
And I was really hurt because I was very, very proud of that record, and I got to be a big part of it. So I've never been able to sort out why an album comes out. It comes out and somehow or other it manages to come out the wrong time or whatever. Sometimes it comes out exactly the right time,
Right.
I could never figure that out. Maybe that's why I'm not a record company executive, because I could never figure that out. I could never figure out when is the proper time to put this record out. You know?
That's the truth.
Steve, were you on Lou Reed's live album from that era too?
Yeah, Lou Reed Live and Rock and Roll Animal. Yeah, both those.
And you were, pardon the pun, but you were very instrumental in the introduction to rock and roll. To Sweet Jane.
It's the intro, Sweet Jane, yeah.
The Sweet Jane. I have to tell you, that does not get nearly as much airplay as it should.
Oh,
but
I love
think that is really one of the great introductions to a song and an album ever. Because I think was it you and Dick Wagner?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
yeah.
I think the way you guys play off of each other and the interplay on that is amazing. And it's just like, wow, you're in for a treat now. This is like the first 2 minutes of the album of the show, and these guys are already kicking butt.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I tell you, Dave, here in New York Classic Rock Radio, they don't even play the studio version of Sweet Jane. They play that version.
Well, I'm glad they're doing that now, because they weren't doing it when I lived there. So
okay.
It's about time. I mean, you can see why David Lee Roth wanted to work with you.
Absolutely.
I mean, just based on that alone. But getting back to A Little Ain't Enough. So Bob Rock was producing the album. This was around the time he was also going to produce Metallica's Black Album, which got a lot of credit for having a really nice sound. Like sonically, it pushed music to another level and sounded really good. What was your experience with Bob for A Little Ain't Enough? And was he doing anything where you were like, wow, this really sounds really good. I think this guy's onto something.
Yeah, well, it's a combination between him and Randy Staub, who was the engineer. You could tell they were both a team. I think they had done several projects together because they kind of knew each other's favorite stuff. You know what I mean? Also, a lot of the amps that were in the studio belonged to Bob Rock, and they were these wonderful Marshall Vox ancient things that just sounded unbelievable, So between Bob and Randy, they got the most incredible sounds on that record. I mean, it was so great to go in the studio and hand Randy or Bob my cable, and they plug it into this old vintage Marshall Plexi, and it sounds absolutely fabulous. I mean, that's, that's a guitar player's dream, They knew what they were doing, and they worked extremely well as a team.
Now, do you think the two videos getting banned from MTV caused a major roadblock for the album?
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I didn't know they'd been banned. Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. That was part of the reason why the album didn't do as well, because he was having trouble getting MTV airplay.
Yeah.
Well, why did they ban him? I mean, I thought California Girls was a little bit more risque than anything he did in those two.
I don't know. I forgot the specific reasons. They were a little particular. But so now, what was the sense of camaraderie in the band in terms of the chemistry amongst all the players?
We had basically lived together for a couple of weeks. We rehearsed almost every day, 5 days a week, depending on David's schedule, because he was obviously had things to do. But plus, I already knew Greg Bissonette. I had met him and worked with him. We kind of all knew each other, and it just sort of sealed the deal. Like I say, when we went to Vancouver and we set up in the studio and played through with the first song, it was like, oh yeah, this is my band. I mean, it just felt like I was already in a band.
That's great.
You know, we hung out together after it